Hello, Stay to Lead community. It's Joan, and I wanted to send you a video with more thoughts on the topic of perfectionism and a little dose of imposter syndrome in there too, since during our 2 days together in Stay to Lead, it seems like those topics resonated a lot with you. And it's always helpful to have more tools, strategies, perspective as you tackle it and however it surfaces. Personally, for me, in my professional journey and my life journey, I have encountered plenty of the moments of the perfectionist trap. And so studying these strategies has helped me break through, and that's why I want to share them with all of you. So a couple ways for you to think about it and some stories behind it. So the first is an exercise about thinking about roles that you play in your life. You can take out a piece of paper. Think about the roles that you play. I'll give you mine. I am a business owner. I am a mentor. I am a mother, a sister, a wife, a daughter, a neighbor, a board member, a volunteer. I think about all these different roles. And when you put them out there, you think about what is the reason we play these roles. We think about it in terms of serving others. There's people that we support. There's a way that we want to show up. There's values behind them. There's expectations. If you were to stop and think about a couple of those roles, and maybe even think about the people that you serve around them, people that are important to you, that you care about, or are contingent on that role that you're playing. You can put their initials around it on a piece of paper. I want you to think about one expectation you have of yourself in playing that role. This is a reflection opportunity. There is no playbook for this, but if you can stop and think about an expectation, I want you to think about, is there pressure attached to that? Where does that expectation actually stem from? Is it something that it's a way that you want to show up? It's a way that you see yourself really being in this role, supporting somebody else, coming through, being there for them? Or is it an expectation you feel like is projected on you? And maybe you've never even validated if that's what that person expects of you, that you have surrounding that role, but you are holding yourself to a standard. Is it realistic? Is there extra pressure, extra activities that you're putting on your plate because of those expectations? So with perfectionism, the way that most women identify with it is the set unrealistic goals and pressure on themselves to be perfect in all aspects of their lives, which is absolutely impossible. So starting with this reflection of figuring out, okay, why do I feel the need to do this extra thing, or what expectation, where is it coming from, externally or internally, helps you figure out if there's something you need to break about this mindset, about the pressure that you're putting on yourself. So that's step number one, is just to try to reflect on it, see what comes up for you. Step number two is connected to one of the reasons why I designed Stay to Lead, which is to have a community, to have some people that you can talk through topics like this with. So maybe there's somebody else that holds similar roles in their life that you can turn to, that was in your Stay to Lead cohort, somebody I've connected you to, or I'm happy to connect you to, a friend, a family member, your partner, somebody in your life that you can do the same exercise with and say, hey, have you ever thought about the roles that you play and the expectations you have of yourself? What are those activities? Where does that come from? Is it fair to us? Is it what the other people actually do expect of us, or have we created this in our minds? I don't know the answers, but talking it out, I promise you'll be able to identify if there's a ball that can be dropped, if there's some pressure that we can relieve, to relieve the tension and the feelings that we have to do everything all the time and do it perfectly. The next thing that I wanted to mention as it relates to perfectionism is actually connecting it back to what I've learned about girls and women in sports. So most of you know my story, that I didn't grow up some amazing athlete. I didn't play sports as much as I was involved in after-school leadership activities or business competitions. And truthfully, I felt pretty insecure about sports and my athleticism until I got the opportunity to start working with sports organizations, and in particular women's organizations, starting with the U.S. Women's National Team and U.S. Soccer. And so working with them, I have discovered so much about the athlete mindset and how girls and women handle perfectionism and even imposter syndrome, based on what they've experienced. On one side with sports, the research shows that girls that play sports longer, you don't have to be the best at it, you don't have to get a college scholarship to it, but those that remain in it basically after 12 years old, it does help them have a more realistic mindset. They enter more male-dominated fields. They've seen the wins, the losses, the challenges. There's always somebody better than you. You don't have all the time in the world. So it's a really great way to help yourself be prepared for the ups and downs that life offers. Of course, there's the other side and the pressure that can come out of if you are projecting perfectionist standards on yourself and not giving yourself any break. Well, let me give you two stories of two young athletes I spent time with that taught me a lot about strategies to disrupt perfectionism. So the first is Mega Gone. This past summer, I had the chance to attend the 121st Women's amateur golf tournament. It was at a local country club. So these are golfers at the amateur level, not just below the professional level, but they're extraordinary, right? And so I was attending with the press, and I was going to be interviewing some of the players, and I researched them beforehand. And one of the players I met and interviewed, Mega Gone, 17 years old, from Homedale, New Jersey. We were talking about how her mindset, how she combats perfectionism and the pressure. And she shared that perfectionism is actually just, you can't do it in golf. She said, if you think you're going to play golf perfectly, the exact opposite is going to happen. It's exactly what this sport is not about, playing perfectly. And so for her, she's had to really train her brain to take it game by game, day by day, experience by experience, and to really be in the moment and use a lot of gratitude and a lot of self-compassion when she is on the course. And one thing I never knew is, having not played a lot of golf before, was that it's a great team sport. She said, you really actually build a lot of relationships. You get to know the person that is also in the tournament next to you, because you're not competing against her. You're always competing against yourself, a previous score or previous performance, if you want to call it that. And so I thought that was a really interesting way to recruit more girls and women into the sport. But again, this mindset that she has, she also is somebody that doesn't spend time on social media. She realizes the rabbit hole she could fall down of comparisons and fear of missing out. And so at 17, to have that wisdom, to have that perspective, to say, I'm going to be grateful that I'm in this game. I'm not going to hold myself to any standards. I'm going to, of course, reflect and figure out ways I want to improve, because I love the sport and it's an important part of my life. But it's just a different way to attack the pressure day by day. Another story, in the summer of 2018, working with U.S. Soccer Organization, I was out in Chicago for the Tournament of Nations, cheering on the U.S. national team with the first U.S. soccer intern class for this She Believes program. You can find out more about She Believes on my website at U.S. Soccer. I digress, but I'm there with a group of college students that are interning at various companies and partners along with U.S. Soccer. And we're watching the game. We had gone to the locker room, and I was really paying close attention to the younger players. One in particular, Tierna Davidson, student at Stanford, all sorts of brilliant. She's double majoring in computer science and engineering, something like that. And a tournament like this, the winner, and the U.S. is playing a number of different countries, is based on the number of goals scored across playing all the different teams. And the U.S. is down. The other team goes to kick the ball into the U.S. goal. Tierna goes to deflect it and ends up kicking the ball into her own team's goal, scoring a point for the competitor and putting her own team down a notch further, making it harder to win the tournament. I felt like, oh my goodness, what is this teenager going through? Thousands of spectators on national TV, ESPN, everybody's watching. The 99ers, the famous players of the first U.S. women's soccer team that won the World Cup are also, some of them are in attendance. And I thought, oh my goodness, what does that feel like? That's crushing. I felt crushed. And I'm looking at these college students around me and they're cringing. But we're close enough to basically see the sweat on these players. And Tierna didn't even skip a beat, wasn't taken out of the game, kept on going. And of course, the US women's team turned it around and ended up winning the whole tournament. But a couple months later, I had an opportunity to interview Tiernan, and I went back to that moment and I said, what goes through your head? How do you prepare yourself at such a young age for these intense moments? And she said, as it relates to imposter syndrome and the pressure to be perfect, she definitely shows herself a lot of self-compassion, but what she reminds herself of is that she's worthy and that she deserves that spot on the team. And she said, whenever I tried out, however I got on this team, my coaches believed in me. However, I showed up right in that moment, not how I was going to be down the line, right in that moment. That's owning your success, right? That's I don't need to change myself. I, didn't need to gain any new skills to disrupt my self-doubt. Just being enough right then and there. So she said, so I could, in those moments when a mistake happens or the pressure is on, quickly through the mental quicksand, go down further and only make things worse. Or I can just focus on being in the present and trusting myself and continuing to move forward, taking action. It's like that confidence, putting your thoughts into action. So I thought that was pretty tremendous reminder that disrupting self-doubt and imposter syndrome and these pressures and expectations on ourselves comes down to us just feeling enough and us just, continuing to move forward, which then is a bridge for me to share with you what I've learned in studying how women are judged for their mistakes in the workplace and beyond. We talked about judgment and the likability penalty and bias in Stay to Lead and how unfair it is. And the first step for us to disrupt this in our favor and squash this bias is to watch how we judge others. And knowing that we're scrutinized for our mistakes and to not let that derail us from raising our hand, from trying, from moving forward. One of the women in one of the most recent Stay to Lead classes told me a story about a time where she didn't make a mistake. Somebody else did. And because she pointed it out, though, that person was even harder on her and always then looking and judging everything she did, looking for a way to call her out. Man, is that unfair, right? That got me fired up. So I share that story with you because I want to make sure that there aren't times where you have been judged harshly for a mistake and you aren't able to move on. Or we can take a second glance at ourselves and check our own bias and see how or if we are judging a woman and her mistakes differently than we would a man in that position. One of the data points out of the pandemic that I found was that 60% of women felt like they were underperforming in some aspect of their life. That's that decreased sense of accomplishment that leads to burnout. I'm doing so much, but it's never enough. We need to squash that because we are enough right now. And so starting with those roles, thinking about where the pressure's coming from, looking for role models, whether it's in sports or literature or media or business or wherever you can find it, people that are really showing up authentically as themselves and pushing through and really have the ability to trust what they bring to the table is enough. I share all that with you to inspire you to reflect and to empower you to break through of those expectations and continue to go after all those goals that you want and that you deserve, and know that I'm in your corner cheering you on, and so is this entire community. So if any of this resonates, you try any of these strategies or skills, I hope that you'll share the insights back with me. Let me know how it goes. You can email me, follow me on LinkedIn or Instagram, comment, and pass along. And I look forward to continuing to share these thoughts and musings with all of you. See you all soon.